Okay, great. We'll start our official meeting for the February 2nd workshop. Uh, Roll call. I think we have Debbie, Meredith, Dave, Bob, and Tom. Missing a few folks. We left off last time in our last workshop with the would have been steep slope vegetation part of landscaping. And tonight we're going to start on section 343-38 buffer yards. We did review this a number of months ago, and so we've captured all the revisions in this updated drafts. And goal tonight to read through this, make sure we're good with what's there, and then maybe we can move on to the recreational ordinance. Looks like on the notes there's a lot of formatting, but there wasn't a lot of changes to at least that section. I'm not sure. Maybe we didn't capture everything. So Bob, you want to pick up?
First note that I have that's not in here is on number 3 on page 61. And it says buffer yard shall be provided by the applicant throughout the entire perimeter of the site or lot, blah, blah, blah. I think we want to add when required, buffer yard shall be provided. Because according to the table that we created on 2 pages later, certain classes of junctures don't require buffer yards. So I think we should just have the phrase when required.
Mm-hmm.
And then the question, this is more a question for Tom, related to that then, should we then reference that table that's 2 pages ahead, or just leave it as is and we get to the table when we get to it?
You can reference the table for details and just call it out like that.
Because I was looking
I
at,
was going to make that comment.
That was the first thing I thought of when we said when required. Was to say as per table.
table B is what it is. The table B buffers required. And I'm fine with doing something like that too. So when required, and then see table B. That's all I had on page 61 there.
There was just a typo in number 4. In the middle of the first sentence, by the owner of the property and replaced, not replaces, is necessary. Little
Okay.
minor thing. Sorry.
Okay, moving to the next page then. Number 7. I just had one minor comment, discussion point on this. It said deviations from this standard may require an alternate landscaping plan, blah, blah, blah. The word may always bothers me in an ordinance, because who determines whether it may or may not? So deviations shall require, deviations require, but the word may just leaves it as who decides.
I would take the may out. I like to use shall, but I've been told in the contract world you're not allowed to use shall. Just
Really?
where I work, shall is not a term you're allowed to use for some reason. I don't understand.
Wow. It appears in all of our legal documents.
Yeah. I don't have an issue with shall, but I can.
If you guys are good with it,
that,
I like it. But
pass it on the legal to review it. So.
I just don't like the word may,
I agree.
because may just leaves it open to who? Who determines?
from the developer, I'm going to say I determine, because you say I may decide.
Yeah. I just don't like that word. It's just too fuzzy.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you.
I didn't have any other comments on that section then. Truth is, I had no comments on the rest of that whole page. Page 62 there.
We spent a lot of time on this.
We
when
did.
We were working on it.
I think that everything there is what we had talked about, and I don't see issues with it, unless someone else notices something. Ready to move to the next page?
Yeah.
Okay, page 63. I only came up with a couple little things here. In D, in the second line of D, it says, if the zoning officer upon inspection determines that the streetscape or screening material, blah, blah, blah. The word streetscape we don't mention streetscape earlier in the discussion. It should almost say if determines that the buffer yard plantings or whatever. So something referencing this particular, not just the word streetscape. So just clean up of the words.
Do we have streetscape in our definitions?
It is not.
It's not.
That was the first thing I just looked
Oh yeah, okay. So I don't think we should use the word streetscape because we're talking about buffer yards. We're
Right.
not talking about streetscape because streetscape and buffer yards can be different things.
I would
So-
define them as different things.
So I lean towards, we're talking about buffer yards, say buffer yard here instead, or something to that effect.
I think that's good.
Okay, then in E2, I think we want to put, the planting plan shall incorporate the following number and types of plantings. And I think we just put comma at a minimum. You're allowed to do more, just can't do less. And then I'm proposing a number 3 on that. And that number 3 is something along the lines of existing vegetation can count towards the requirements. This is often the case. Anytime when we develop something, I'll typically try to not clear the whole perimeter so that the big existing mature trees, are all there. And those should count towards these requirements.
I think it would depend on how they fit into the, so you mean according to the planting types, like heights? And,
Sure.
yeah.
Well, according to the types, not the heights, because clearly if you've got a 18-inch diameter oak, it's going to be a 90 feet tall
Right.
compared to a 6 or 8 foot tall tree.
That would be a canopy.
A
tree.
canopy, so it would fall into the canopy. So you count the number of canopy, and if you've got some more, scrub-like trees in there, they count towards the understory trees, and you probably have to throw in some shrubs or something like that, or evergreens may exist on the site too, depending on the site. So some wording in there. Do people agree? Some wording in there existing?
If we can reasonably enforce it to say that doesn't really count. That's not acting as a buffer.
Well, the way it works, and Adams is the one that's the cleanest with this. I will actually do a walk with the township, and we will count the trees. And I will actually paint. I'll put a dot on each tree that counts, so that we know this is what we need to plant. That we've got 5 canopy trees here. I can do 5 less canopy trees that I have to plant as a result, and that kind of thing. Do you walk? Well, you don't really have buffer yard stuff.
We
do
don't
you?
have that, we would
So-
be intending to go through and do that as part of the development.
But I think that's the cleanest way to go. Township engineer walks, well, in that case, it is township engineer, so Scott Foreman does it with us. Scott Foreman, Joe, and I walk it and agree on what's on my property in the buffer yard spec that meets the criteria. And then we just agree on it, and then it's done.
Okay, so what you can identify that meets criteria counts towards your requirements, and then you add in more,
Add in more.
rather than cut a tree down and plant a new one.
Yeah, or have to just plant additional canopies when there's already a dozen canopies already sitting here that I don't need any canopy trees. That's typically the tree that exists already, is the canopies.
I'm comfortable with that. What do you all think? Especially
So,
if that,
Yeah.
that
Whatever word
methodology
you
doesn't
use
make
is
sense.
appropriate.
Cut
Right,
things
That makes
down.
sense.
I mean, somebody during the walkthrough, then you would determine if those trees are healthy, not healthy.
Oh, yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean, because
And
it's,
certain trees we'll look at it and say, no, that one doesn't count.
Right.
It's just not, it's not good.
no, I don't have an issue with that.
What if it's like a forest? Like, how would you it would be hard to quantify that.
Well, no, you can actually count trees. You'll know, because what I do first is we stake out the property line. I want the engineer come along and stake the property line, and then we'll know where the buffer yard is relative to that property line. And you walk through, and if that tree is in there, it's just, you count.
If you have too many canopy trees, can you get the understory to go?
Well, the way Adams works, a canopy, whatever trees are there will count for either canopy or understory. because they look at it as you're already providing a shield. Now, we do typically have to fill in shrubs, because shrubs don't. But there's also been cases where we have a very dense area, and they'll say, skip doing anything, because nothing else is gonna grow underneath of it. And they leave it at that, and that's just.
And it depends on what's next to your buffer that you're trying to create. If there's a hillside, up or down may change really what your plantings should be. So I don't really have an issue with that.
I'm just concerned we have pretty dense woods and there's no understory, there's nothing underneath. It's just, you can see through it, it's like 1,000 telephone poles in there. And you see the house on the other side.
But the last thing you wanna do is start cutting those trees down just so you can put smaller stuff in. That's a horrible solution.
I agree. You know, the stumps, it just creates a mess, you know? Okay, we think we can manage through that then.
Yep. Well, number 3, we'll work the language out.
I had nothing else on the rest of that page. So table C looked fine to me as well. Okay, moving to page 64, required plantings. Just a couple comments here. Buffer yards shall be planted with, this is in number 1 on F1, with a mix of native, deciduous, and evergreen species of plants as follows. Well, it's just the word mix in there, because not all of our buffer yards require a mix. Some of them don't have any evergreens in them. So I just think our word choice in that sentence needs to reflect that some of them are mixed and some of them aren't, or remove the word mix, or.
It might be easier just take out a mix of and just plant it with native, deciduous, and evergreen species.
I would agree. And then the caliper of the trees in A, B, and C in that. We have 2.5-inch caliper on the canopy, 1.5 inches on the understory, etc. The question on that is, and this is always a good question, is that at time of planting, or is that at time of review by the township? Because if you plant them ahead of time, and you plant a 2-inch tree, and 2 years later is when you're actually going to hand over everything to the township, it's probably at that point that you should have 2.5-inch trees, not necessarily right at planting. So it really depends on.
I would say at time of planting, that's me. If they plant it 2 years ahead of time, it's still 2.5 inches. Then there's no debate, because you can't guarantee that that's going to add that extra.
The problem is, it's not that easy, because this 2.5-inch at 4.5 feet, if you go to Dambaugh's, Lake Forest, whatever you want to call it, and look for a 2.5-inch caliper tree, they basically sell 2-inch plus. They're not necessarily 2.5, and that's not always up to 4.5 feet. It's more down at the 3-foot range. And if you're going to actually go there and say, I want to buy a 2.5-inch tree, you're probably going to get a 2-inch tree, not a 2.5.
Should we?
And therein lies the little bit of a discrepancy between it.
Should we say greater than 2 inches?
I don't know what we want to say. I just know that you don't want to have someone get bit.
Yeah, that
Those
might be
little
tough,
nuances.
tough spec to meet, right? There's nature. You can't really spec nature.
No.
You have to say, greater than 2 inches.
So I don't know exactly what to do or how to say it.
He may get a deal on 4-inch trees if he wants to put it.
I can tell you in general, I wait to plant until I'm ready to hand over the road. And the reason I do that is because it'll probably die, it'll probably have other issues, and by the time I walk through with Tom or Scott Foreman or someone else, they're gonna say, that and that need to be replaced now. So I planted them 2 years ago, they died, I have to replant them to hand it over. Then 18 months later, we inspect again, and I have to replant more because they died again. I'd rather just replant them once instead of replant them twice. So I typically wait. I don't know what other people,
Well, it's usually at the very end.
yeah, for the same reason.
Exactly.
Probably. So I don't know. I don't know how I handle the caliper spec. I think the core concept is good.
Is there a better way to define it than caliper?
There isn't.
I wouldn't
Canopy
think so.
trees are always defined by caliper. Now the understories are most of the time not defined by caliper. They're defined by height.
Right.
You buy a 6 foot or 8 foot tree, but you don't typically buy a 1.5 inch caliper tree. You buy a 6 foot tree in that case.
I personally like, instead of 2.5, because if you said they're tough to get, say a minimum of 2 inches or whatever it is that we can reasonably buy on the market.
You have any issue with something like that?
No.
Because right now we're saying a minimum of 2.5 inch caliper,
Mm-hmm.
and you're saying they typically don't have.
They come anything two and up
2 and up. Okay.
is what you typically buy. So I'm fine with that. And then we've already fixed the one down below, because we had talked about this one when we were doing this the first time, the 1.5 inch caliper, and I was saying the understories really don't come that way, they come height based.
Mm-hmm.
And we already have the 8 foot there, which I think is fine. And some of this is obviously up to the discretion of the engineer as he's walking through looking at the trees, because you're not taking a measuring tape there with you and say, oh, that's 6 foot or 7'9" or something like that.
It's gonna be what it is.
Yeah, you look at it and say, yeah, that meets the intent.
The intent is to provide the cover at various ranges, that's what we're gonna look at.
Yeah. I've never had them actually come with a measuring tape or calipers and anything like that. It's just look at it and say, yeah, meets the intent. I had nothing else on this.
Are we good with the plants? I know
Well-
you had a note there. I didn't look them up.
These plants, I believe, are the ones that came from Adams,
Right.
which is the basically Butler County
Yeah.
acceptable plants. Now, if we want, and I don't know who, do we want to run this list by Lake Forest or some landscape architect or whatever to determine if the list is good? I have no way of saying if this is.
It's been
The right
vetted by Adams.
It has been vetted by Adams.
I'm fine with that.
I am too.
They got 20 years of experience on this. If there was something in there they didn't like, they would have already pulled it out.
So out of curiosity, when you do a community like in Adams, do you take them like this list and you say, what can I get? Or how do you usually procure those trees?
The way I procure the trees is I go to my landscaper and say, I need 22.5 inch trees, and they need to come from this kind of list, and he'll glance at it and say, yep, that's readily available, that's readily available, blah, blah, blah. And he'll,
Right, so you would
He
give them the
typically
list and
picks.
they'd say what they had available.
Yeah. he would typically pick what he believes is readily available and more suitable for the applications. And I don't personally get involved in the minutiae of what the plans are.
Just curious.
The alternatives, I was just reading through that. Let's just make sure we don't put ourselves in an uncomfortable situation. We've written this down and we've given them proposed alternatives, which meet the letter, but we don't like.
See, someone,
I think our intent was, if we're requiring, say, 60 feet, for some reason he can't get 60 feet in there, right? He wants to knock it down to 40. He wants to put a lot higher density in. That was
correct.
our intent. That was the reason we added this.
Yeah, and we kept it fuzzier here than Adams had it, because Adams had a whole mathematical proportions to the whole thing, which we said that's overkill. So I'm good with that concept of, you know what, you wanna propose something more dense, bring it to us and we'll talk about it. And just leave it more open-ended.
Is it clear though that, and I just didn't read it close enough, that this is last resort, that if we see he can fit, for example, 60 feet in there, we're not gonna entertain 40.
Well, that's more up to our discretion when we're reviewing a plan. And we look at a plan and he's instantly proposing taking the 60-foot buffer down to 20, and we're gonna say, why? And unless they've already got some good justification, we're gonna
Because
say.
that can fit 30 more houses in it. It's not an economical development if I can't add 30 more houses, so I add 30 more houses, that gives me, I can put a 20-foot buffer.
Yep, I hear you. So that's the discussion
What they
point.
did down there.
That's the discussion point, is that we would then basically hold the ground before we ever got to that point. When they're discussing it, say, no, you can get this to work. But is there some serious reason you're gonna give us that it can't work?
I guess it comes down to the supervisors then deciding if they want the development, they want the extra homes versus smaller buffer zone.
Well, it's really up to us first, because we're the ones making the recommendation. And 9 times out of 10, the supervisors are gonna go with what we propose. So if we say we object to the development because the buffer yard's insufficient and they wanna force it ahead anyway, they can certainly do that, but they're at their own peril if they do that.
It also comes down, like you were saying before, if it's abutting the slope or abutting the hillside versus on the other side of that buffer zone is some residential home that's been there for 30 years, then we'll look at it case by case.
Right.
Now, the bigger questions I had in this paragraph, and this actually appeared earlier too, and that is, will provide effective relief from noise, odor, lighting, and visual screening. The only real things we can go and quantify that you can achieve with a buffer are lighting and visual. You can't really quantify odor, and you can plant a lot more trees, but it's not going to change the odor.
Flowering trees.
What's that?
Flowering trees.
Flowering trees. Okay. So you're going to mask the odor. So I guess my question is, I'm not objecting to those are important things to consider. But how do you quantify that, and how do you say that you meet it or you don't meet it?
Right.
I have no idea. We've already said how we meet the visual screening because we have a nice table in which to do it. But
I feel like that's the first place we even mentioned the word odor.
I thought it was once earlier in the sort of the general concepts of the paragraph.
Buffer yard, an area designed to function use of great elements and uses of land. Maybe have a setback.
No, I don't see it there. The very first, in general number 1, it says visual and noise protections. Doesn't say odor.
Yeah.
So yeah, that probably is the first time we mention odor. And also, buffer yards aren't going to do a whole lot for noise.
It's just sight. It's really the goal. I mean, it's gonna have auxiliary effects, but it's sight issues really your sight issue. It's the only thing you're gonna benefit from.
Mm-hmm. So the question is, do we leave the word odor and noise in here, noise in the beginning paragraph? You'd recommend taking
I'd
them
say
out?
take them out, because I don't think it doesn't serve the purpose.
And there's nothing to measure, there's no
Right.
standard.
Correct.
We can measure decibels, but what should it be, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be arbitrary to try to come up with something without some data points, yeah.
I'm good with blowing the odor and noise away here and noise away on the opening paragraph.
And adding lighting.
Let's, in paragraph 1 you're saying?
Yeah.
Number 1? Well, visual and lighting sort of go together, because you are screening it, and the screening is providing a block which will reduce visibility one way and light the other way. So I don't have a problem leaving light or adding light to number one, getting rid of noise in number one. You have any issue with that, Tom?
So replace noise with light.
And then get rid of noise and odor on G. So any other comments on buffer yard? The only other thing I had on buffer yard, and we haven't gotten to it yet actually, is after I read through the recreational land development stuff, they talk about buffer yards in there too. And that it's almost worthy of adding another line in our tables for that type of use and what the buffer yard should be. So as we discuss this recreational stuff, we may want to go back and add a line to the tables that's appropriate. But it doesn't change any of the wording here. It's just where does that class fit in terms of what kind of buffer it should be versus its neighbors. I have another one that will go through all those tables. I'm going to propose that we jump ahead momentarily to page 71. This is for Jeff, because my last comments in here, or actually Sylvia's comment on this, was that John Rushford was going to review an update. Have you looked at any of this?
I've looked at some of it, yeah. I think I heard Michelle has too.
Can you review that administrative enforcement and appeals side? Because that's really all legal is.
Yeah.
And review that and see if there's anything there that we should be doing or changing in that. Because I don't know that we want to bother going over it beyond that until you would give us some comments.
Yeah.
And then can come back and say, yep, we like your comments and agree, and we'll move on. Good with that?
Yeah.
So other than the recreational, I think that finishes this out though.
Well, it was a long run, but it's good, we got that done.
Yeah.
I didn't bring the copy of recreational, but I can get it on my phone. I do have it still in the email, I believe.
Did you guys have copies of it?
I didn't print it, but I have what's in here. Is it vastly different?
I don't know. I didn't look at
It
this.
is,
It was in your email
it was.
that you just sent a few days ago.
It's quite a bit different.
But you will find it in the email from just a few days ago. There's a Word doc of it.
I mean, the core of it is to me similar, but there's a lot of add-ons.
You guys have that stuff in front of you?
I found it. Did you find it? Yeah, I found it. Okay.
So, this came from Forward, I guess, correct?
Correct. They rewrote theirs completely and scrapped it. Although again, some of it's the same, and certain paragraphs are the same as a basis, so, than what we had before.
So, let's just start down through it. Some of this, the first two paragraphs would be moved to definitions in the, in our whole definitions area of the Saldo. For you, Tom, the non-recreational dwellings should be all caps per the standards, the way the thing's
Okay.
done. Then in the non-transient recreational dwellings, it mentions RLD, and RLD isn't defined until they do it screwy down below. If we're going to use RLD, we need to define it in recreational land development. It needs to be the acronym defined right there, rather than later in paragraph B1. But that's just a minor, logistics thing. My first comment was minor, and that's just forward needs to turn into Lancaster in number B2. I didn't have any comments on the first page, which gets us all the way down to B4. I guess we probably should talk about some of these things. Recreational land development, the way this is being defined is in B1. These are for rental or lease, not lots for sale. And I'm assuming that's what we want to have this as, correct?
Correct.
Okay, because I agree with this. As soon as you go for lots for sale, you better have a subdivision. If someone's going to own something, there better be a subdivision, and they're creating an actual lot. And then all kinds of things change. Okay.
So these would be for sale or lease?
What's that?
Would be, I'm sorry, for lease or rent?
Lease or rent is what this says in B1.
I thought, okay.
And or the short-term rental versus long-term lease. I don't know if there's a difference there.
A
We have to
campground.
define it.
Isn't it a campground?
What's that?
Isn't this a campground?
It is.
Yeah.
But a lot of campgrounds are, you do the rent or lease for a year. You do the whole year.
Oh,
You-
yeah, okay.
You rent your spot, you've got your
Some,
spot for the year.
Yeah, they're looking for a place to park that big RV. They don't leave it in the driveway of the townhouse, right? So they park it there and they have a place to keep it all year or even longer.
Right.
Is there any legal difference between rent and lease?
No, I don't think so.
Do we need both words in there?
I think you could be consistent and use the same word.
Just say rental?
Yeah.
And leave it at that?
Yeah, the new trend is for a weekend that you rent a field and somebody comes in, there's no utilities, there's nothing there, and it's quick. And that's apparently the latest fad that people want. And there's not a lot of there's not a lot of sites on it, maybe 2 or 3 sites. And so there's not much for a property owner to deal with, because all you gotta do is have room to maneuver on the property to say, okay, here's sort of a pad and that's the end of it, but that is the latest trend.
Yeah, in fact, I know somebody who was talking about doing that. Where they said, I'm close to the interstate, I've got enough land. People are always coming through, they're looking for a place to stop. They've got to have a holding tank. I don't have water, I don't have electric, but they've got generators. And they're just looking for, an overnight place or 2 days or something like that. So I got a fire pit for them and that, some gravel to get there.
Well, you'll find none of that is allowed by us.
That's what I mean,
Yeah.
This isn't like renting, so like down on 19, like a place to store your RV,
correct, that's different.
right?
It's a storage.
Because that's a lease.
So this is more like big bear campground.
Yes.
Bear run, yeah.
So just keep that in mind when we're going through it. I mean, everything evolves, you know, and it's one of those things, that's the latest trend. Just to get away from the communities that have everything you wanna go to, when you have one of those versus, I wanna be with nature, I wanna be away from that. And you get two friends, whatever, that you're traveling together with, and let's just park it here and.
Yeah, I find lots of issues when we get to the next couple of pages related to making this work.
Oh, no, it's not it's I don't know that we have any, but I guess since RV sales are up so high, I would expect something to happen, so.
Okay, so, B5, location of all recreational land development shall be free from adverse influences by swamps, marshes, garbage, rubbish disposal areas, or other potential breeding places for insects and rodents, and 2, not subject to flooding. Rather vague. Are we okay with that?
I don't think, what's the concern with that one, I guess? See, there's the rubbish or insect concerns, but that I get with some things, but like a swamp or a marsh is a natural feature versus the other things that are man-made issues.
Yeah, I just look at this and think,
We separate those out somehow.
we could. I'm just throwing it out for conversation, because the first time I read it, it's like, really? It's like, why are we talking about this and how are we judging it? Who's judging it? Who's making the determination?
And it's confusing because, I mean, you're gonna want like an area for dumpsters. So,
Oh, but that's not what that's talking about. This is talking about you can't do a campground on Vogel's landfill. That's essentially what this is saying.
oh, never mind, I misread that.
So, yeah, you definitely want those kind of facilities.
I misread that, sorry.
And I guess, my thought is like an ATV or, recreational vehicle, do we care if there's a swamp or a marsh? Or would we prohibit that? I don't know how that's even enforceable.
Well, I don't know that any of these campgrounds are gonna allow any ATVs on any
Probably
property.
campground, right, but
Yeah.
if there was ATV park or something like that, it seems like that would fit the definition still.
I don't know, I never even thought about that. So, I don't mind having language that says something about, the site should have some characteristics to it, but who's judging and how do you judge it?
We're gonna require buffer yards?
Well, that comes down later
It's in
too.
there, okay. We should.
That's part of it too. I don't know what to think of number 5. I just thought it was really strange to have potential breeding places for insects or rodents. It's just,
Yeah, there's definitely health and safety aims, but it gets sort of arbitrary.
yeah. Clearly, everyone's gonna wanna come to the mosquito-infested campground. There's some things that just doesn't make sense. We don't have to decide all this either. We can, because this is our first go at this, we can think about some of these things and come back for discussion. Because that's minor compared to some of the things I see later. as we
Well,
get into this.
let's talk about it tonight. I'm not even able to get that on my phone. I've got a brand new phone yesterday. I don't have my apps loaded yet. Every time I try to do something, it wants me to sign in and buy a new app. If you just wanna walk through and talk about your concerns, I
Okay.
think that's worthwhile for tonight. And then
Okay.
We'll start over, we'll go through it again, but we'll at least have thought about it.
That sounds fine. So then moving to C, design standards and other requirements. Recreational land development shall have a gross area of at least 5 contiguous acres in single ownership or under unified control. I have no issue with that, except that's zoning. That's not Saldo. That doesn't belong here. So I think we need to make sure that we're splitting that out is appropriate when we get to the zoning.
I guess with that, would that hold true in whichever districts You allow those
Correct,
in?
correct, we need to decide, because it could be different sizes in different districts too.
Correct, because I mean, R2, you're not gonna probably do it at all. R1 is probably the only district you're gonna allow it. You know, industrial,
Yeah, I don't know where you want to allow it. Clearly, it's going to be an R1 because, in general, you're going to think of camping as more out of the way and
right,
with more space.
so,
But take a look at Indian Brave Camp down there. It's not exactly R1 territory.
correct.
So I don't know what we want to do in different districts and if the requirements change. But again, that comes back to, that's in the zoning ordinance, in the zoning tables.
Right,
As to how that's
and
done.
that would be strictly in the table of which,
Yeah.
whether you determine what zoning district you have and you want this or not, so that we don't have to discuss that.
And it could be that we decide that, you know what, in R2, you'll allow it on 5 acres, but if you're to do it in R1, you're gonna be able to do 20 acres or more, or 15 acres, or whatever. That you want big enough space in R1 to make it, you know, enough feel to the place. So that's all done in the zoning tables when we get there, is my opinion. This has number 2. I was just talking about vegetative green strip of planting or natural growth along all property boundaries. Such greening shall be a depth of not less than 20 feet to effectively screen the area, blah, 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 and a minimum of 6 feet in height. That's buffer yard. That belongs in buffer yard. We augment the table with whatever we want, and it should be dependent on what zone this is in and what zone it abuts. Okay, number 3. I have issues with just about every single number on this page. Number 3. They have, shall comply with lot requirements found in 22-407. I assume that's their ordinance numbers. All lots in the RLD shall be a minimum of 50 foot wide and 75 foot deep and may be clustered.
That's
Gross.
really big.
Was that?
That's really big.
Yes. Gross density, however, shall not exceed total of 5 sites per acre or 8 sites per acre if it's tent primitive camping only. That's big. 50 foot wide. I actually measured Indian Brave. I just went on Google Earth and measured it. And it's 35 feet, which is very, very typical of a campground. And 70 foot deep, that's pretty deep too. Because when I go and look for campsites, you have to enter the length of your equipment and all that kind of stuff in there. And many of the sites are limited to 40 foot deep equipment. Now, granted, the site's going to be a little bit more than that, but, and some of that has to do with topography too. So the site might actually be 70 feet, but it can only accommodate 40 foot because then it starts sloping too much and that kind of stuff. But I think both of those numbers are out of line.
I think, like you said, 40 as a minimum.
You could, I'm saying that's 35 down there at Indian Brave.
I meant depth.
Oh,
I mean,
depth.
some of them are, you know, that we fit into, because we have a big RV. It's 55. I mean, we're not 55 feet long, but that's what we usually like look for. But you're right, 35 wide. Little campers only go 40 max.
No, I would agree, because often people are gonna pull with a, you know, a pickup and a pop-up, and they're gonna fit fine on a 35 by 40. And it's up to the campground manager, the campground owner, whatever, to decide what equipment he allows on what spaces and leave it at that. But I think the 50 by 70 is excessive. So you're thinking 35 by 40, 35 by something else, what?
I was thinking 35 by 40 minimum, but
People okay with that?
I don't have any experience with it, but, you know, as long as they can get in there and maneuver to back their RV in, and
Okay, gross density, that's the next one.
Do we care about gross density all that much?
We
It's
do.
Spot size.
You probably want, yes, because you don't want to take and occupy every square inch of the space.
Right.
So I do think, because if we went down to 35 by 50 and allowed them to pack it in as tight as they possibly could,
Yeah.
That's a very high number.
Your parking lot.
Yeah, that's a very high number. Actually, that's like, we did camp at Circus in Vegas once. And that wasn't asphalt campground, it's crazy. It was actually camped on the asphalt in the parking lot. But, they have 5 units per acre here, 5 sites per acre. I did calculation, Indian Brave has 191 campsites, according to their map, of regular campsites, plus they have a primitive area. If you ignore the primitive area, they're at 6.77 sites per acre on what they have. If you subtract out the acreage of the primitive area, that number goes up. It's probably closer to 9 or something like that. I didn't do that math because I don't know exactly what their acreage of primitive is. If you add in the primitive, that number goes up even more. So where do we want to stand? I think that the 5 is low. The 5 is substantially low based on what I've seen other places. Comments?
5 per acre.
Was there a green space requirement in here?
What's that? You want to keep it at 5, you're saying?
Well, I'm just thinking 5 per, I'm trying to visualize 5 per acre.
It's not a fifth of an acre per unit, per lot, like a subdivision would be. It's much like, well, for example, if you took R1 is essentially 1 unit an acre, R2 is 2 units an acre. And think of that as being a house. That's not like a campground at all. Campground, intentionally, you put everything nice and tight, and then you leave lots of green space all over the place. So I do think you want a number, but I think that number should be closer to the 10 number than the 5 number.
With the gross, yeah.
With the gross.
Because we're gonna require buffer yards of some sort. And there's gonna be topography, especially around here, that's gonna limit, it's not gonna be, most places are not gonna be a flat pancake type parking lot. They're gonna be limited by everything else.
But I'm leaning more towards that 10 kind of a number.
Indian Braves between 7 and 9, depending on how you measure the primitive area.
Right.
I'm inclined to say 7, but we allow primitive area. That gives them some flexibility if they do have, rolling site or hillsides and things where they can put a row of tents in where they couldn't fit a row of campers or something like that.
I'm not hung up too much either way if people have a different number. You want to go with 7?
Yeah, I do. I just think 10 gets too crowded. It's just too much.
Okay, moving to the second half of that paragraph then. Individual lots or camping sites shall be separated from service building structures and other occupied buildings and structures by a minimum distance of 50 feet. I don't have an issue with that. No recreational vehicle, tent platform, or residential structure shall be located closer than 25 feet to the street right-of-way or closer than 25 feet to other recreational vehicle, tent platform, or residential structure, or 100 feet to any adjacent property line. Okay. The street right-of-way has me going, because they mention it down lower when we talk about streets. I think they're thinking of this being a street with a right-of-way.
Like with a public street, yeah.
Yeah, even if it's not public, but the street with an actual right-of-way in the middle of this development where you've got a right-of-way running through it for all the streets. And that's not reality. It's just a gravel path. And I don't think it should have a right-of-way because it's all private property. It's not subdivided.
Correct.
So what right-of-way are they talking about here?
I would say it has to be the road right of way where their property is on. It's the only thing that I can see.
Correct, and I do, there should be a buffer from that.
Right.
So from the road right-of-way, that if you've got adjacent streets that abut the property, there should be setback distances. But I would actually argue those should be more than 25 feet in those cases. But internal to this site, I don't see road right-of-ways and I don't see setbacks.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but it's a big piece of property, so, you know, it's almost like a condo. You know, the buffer and the protection against the road and what you do inside is up to you.
Correct. Yeah.
I'm good with that, yeah. I wasn't gonna limit them on how close inside, you know, that's, someone decides when they show up if they wanna rent it or not.
Because usually a campsite will have either 1 lane or 2 lane road that winds through, paved or gravel, depending on the kind of site, and you're gonna back off that paved area onto your paved or gravel site, and you're literally gonna be within 10 feet. Your bumper's gonna be within 10 feet of the curb, of the edge of pavement. Now, if you demanded that it's 25 feet from the right of way, and you don't make a 50-foot right of way, that pushes your front bumper, what? Way back off the
Now we
street.
know how they calculate that 75-foot depth.
Yeah.
That's how.
Yes, you're 50 foot before you can
Yeah.
be doing anything. So I disagree with the concept here. I think the right of way should be, yes, adjacent road right of ways we need to be away from. But I think we should be further away than 25 feet from a right of way. But internally 0.
I see it.
Any other?
No, I'm gonna do it.
Several sections. Sorry, the roof is leaking.
Okay, so we're gonna say how far away from the street right of way then? This is the public street right of ways adjoining the development.
So like if your RV's backing up towards the street, you mean?
It could be, because
I'm trying to visualize that, where that's applicable.
you've got a public road that comes into the development,
Right,
and then you've got a public road here, and you've got your driveway into the development here.
Right.
You've got lots, sites,
Yeah, okay.
all along this area.
so like where you're.
How close that is to the public street. This is saying 25 feet to the right of way, which is gonna put you 37 feet from the, edge of pavement essentially. If you're gonna try to buffer, you've got no room left to buffer.
I wouldn't put it any less than our setback on anything else we have. It's
I
basically
agree.
50 feet, right? I wouldn't go less than 50 for that.
I agree.
Oh, I'm thinking in the 50 range. Okay, so we changed that 1 to 50. And that's to the public street. And then it says closer than 25 feet to any other recreational vehicle, tenant, blah, 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 structure. That's a little strange too, because on theirs, if you have a 50-foot site, depending on how you park your vehicles, and the vehicles themselves are wide, you're never going to be necessarily 25 feet away from your neighbor. So I don't even know, if you have a site, what difference does it make how they lay out their sites? If they want to lay out their site such that the one trailer is parked, within 5 feet, 7 feet of the edge, and the other one's within several feet, so be it. And if people don't like it, they don't use that campground. So it's just a private facility. They can do what they want.
It's up to them to decide.
So personally, I would blow that away. Now, I would keep the requirements between the occupied buildings and structures on the site of 50 feet. That's fine. So you keep, the restroom facilities or the camp office or store or whatever it happens to be, more than 50 feet away from the individual sites. That's fine. And 100 feet away from any adjacent property line. I think that's consistent because that gives us, buffer area as well to work with. I have no issue with 100 feet. Good?
Since this is a transient type of,
Oh, it gets worse than that.
Okay.
We'll get to that in a minute.
I say, should we require a fence of some sort? If there's, I'm just thinking, if I live there and all of a sudden they're putting a camper trailer place next door to me, all of a sudden, I'm not gonna have that same comfort and security, fuel security, because of transient people. It's not like you got your neighbor who you know you're gonna see every day. So, do we wanna?
Well,
we're
we'll
gonna
get to that,
Okay.
because this mentions transient and non-transient here in a minute. So we'll get to discussing some of that. At least 2 off-street parking spaces of 270 square feet each shall be provided for each site. At least 1 such off-street parking space shall be provided on each lot as required. Okay, couple problems here. 270 is a really big number. A normal parking spot is 9 feet wide by 18 foot deep is what you paint on a parking area, parking lot, which turns, I didn't write the math down, but I think that's, oh, it is 162 feet. So it's 100 square feet less than what they're requiring there. So if you actually, and it's not a bad idea. So say you, for example, you have the ability to park just your RV on the site, and you demand that, you know, the truck or tow vehicle or whatever else sits in another lot. That lot should just have spaces that are 162 foot kind of size, not 270. Most sites are going to end up providing the ability to put an RV and the vehicle right beside it on that same site, which is fine. But I just think the number there is goofy, especially if it relates to a parking lot for the overflow vehicles. That's just,
Yeah,
that's a really big site.
that's way over for that. Most
Yeah.
people are gonna want
That's a
to-
10 foot wide by 27 foot deep spot to park a car that you tow behind your vehicle.
Tow behind, not going to keep it, yeah.
And
So-
then there'd probably be parking requirements if there was some kind of building for a store, you know, like a general store or something like that. That would have its own parking requirements, right? Like if they had a
That's not
campground store.
talked about in here at all, and it's something we may want to discuss.
Yeah, cause if you have a pool, you know, a pool with a
Right.
building that's gonna give you little groceries, stuff like that, then that doesn't fit. You can allow it, but I mean, it's really not in there yet.
It's not, that's not even mentioned in here. Nor would the requirements of that would be, because that's,
You know,
this
usually-
opens up a whole can of worms.
Usually they want a little store, little supply store, bait shop, and then they start selling beer and alcohol, you know, just whatever people want, right? And it's probably not even permanent. I can think of several places where I can't believe that all the licensing that you buy.
Well, the swimming pool, the parking, the store, all of those need to be commercial structures. So you're gonna have to meet all the ADA requirements, all of that code stuff goes well beyond, it's the same stuff we would do for a clubhouse in a community. It's the exact same stuff.
So if we put it in there, they won't do it. And we have to put it in there, right? It shouldn't be any different.
We should be mentioning that stuff, but I don't know how deep you have to go into it.
Yeah, I mean, that's, what you ultimately have to decide is, do you want something like that, do you want a buffer, I mean, to me, it doesn't, it's part of the facility. So, you can allow it, but then you gotta say, this is how you're going to allow it.
What kind of, do you know what kind of taxes they get from that versus that same lot, you know, put 5 homes on it versus that same size lot, which is transient camper trailers?
Well, if you put it in the commercial, that property is actually gonna be, like in a mixed use area. Then that'll be set up as commercial, and the property's gonna have a higher, what do they call it, value to it for, taxes versus residential. Plus, if you have residential, you're gonna have more expenses to cover that road and everything else on the township, whereas the campground, you're not gonna have that.
But really, none of that's gonna matter, because that's up to the assessor's office. The assessor's gonna come after you build a commercial building on this site, they're gonna assign a value to it. How they mathematically do that, who knows? I always told people it depended on the time of day and phase of the moon and a number of other factors like
Income
that.
of the property and, yeah.
Who knows? Who knows what they use? But that's their problem.
If they put one $500,000 building versus $5,000 homes that now have now collect school taxes and property taxes versus a vacant lot essentially, with one building on it.
Yeah, I don't know how that's done, but
I'm just looking at a tax standpoint. I think we should put into this regulation ordinance everything that we require for a community center, for a commercial building, anything like that. I think the profit margins on this type of an operation are not available for those kind of structures.
well, it's gonna be an, if they choose, it's gonna be a paragraph, basically, if they choose to build and community facilities like swimming pools and clubhouses, those have to abide by X, Y, and Z. And that X, Y, and Z should be the same language we put into whatever we have as common elements inside of developments. It's the same thing. So whatever's required of that should be the same thing required of this.
Right. That was my point.
Okay, back to the parking. So,
My point was that if there would be parking for the store.
Yep.
Parking for the pool. So this parking seems excessive. 2 additional spaces.
it's not too additional, is it?
At least 2 off-street parking spaces of 270 square feet each
Correct.
shall be provided for each site.
Correct. But a typical campground is going to provide 2 slots on each site already. This is, if they don't provide 2 on each site, they have to provide 1 somewhere else. That's what this says, right? Am I reading it right?
At least 1 shall be provided on each lot. Okay,
Correct.
yes.
So at least 1 on the lot, but most sites, every place we've gone to,
Mhm.
you're allowed 2 vehicles on the site. Most of the time it's gravel. Doesn't matter, but if it's provided, it's provided. So you need no other parking. But in the event that we have a clubhouse or something here, whatever requirements we're to make of the clubhouse should have that parking, swimming pool, all the commercial stuff that you have to do has to be done there.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
So, I would like to change that number from 270 to down to 2 at 162 or 2 at 175 or any kind of a number like that that's a real parking space. Because if they do choose to do them as a parking lot, it should just be a reasonable parking lot size.
So minimum's 162. I say we go to 175.
What's the length of a long bed truck?
It's close to 25 feet.
Yeah, close to 25.
A crew cab dually with the equipment is close to 25 feet long. And then it's actually even my full-size pickup truck crew cab with the 5.5-foot bed doesn't fit in the standard size parking spot. It hangs over.
Well, that's where they got the 270. A dually with a long bed.
Yeah, you usually take out 2.5
Yeah.
spots. Actually, I should say, yeah, two wide and half into the next one.
And 9 feet wide with a dually with big mirrors isn't gonna cut it either. You're gonna want 10 or 11 feet wide. So
Yeah, that's where the 270 came.
Which doesn't surprise me, but I'm looking at it not from the site side, and maybe we need 2 different numbers. Because on the site, it makes sense that you have those kind of dimensions. But in a parking lot at the swimming pool and clubhouse for overflow parking, those are typically normal vehicles.
Right.
And that's the one that you don't want to get those slots ridiculously big. So maybe it's 2 separate numbers.
The zoning ordinance is your standard in the township is a 10 by 20,
Okay,
so it's 200 square feet.
so if we went with 200 as the standard,
Then it would be consistent.
and yeah, and that makes sense. And if we did, and if we want, we can keep it as just 1 number, or you can do 2 separate numbers. You could do, I know, it could be worded, we could keep them at 270. And then if, for parking that is not on the site, at least, or at 200, keep it at that, something to that effect? two 270 foots on the site. That counts for your bigger vehicles. But for those that only have one, then 200 on another location. I don't know how to word that, Tom. You know what we're talking about?
I do. We can come up with something.
Either gotta provide it on the campsite, or they gotta provide it. But it has to be that larger 270 size, one place or the other.
They have to, if they're on the site, they're the larger ones. If one of them moves somewhere else, it can be the smaller one, the 200. I'm fine with that, because then if it's a parking lot, it's a real parking lot. It's not a huge site thing. Okay, street requirements number 5. This is where I really got stuck. Here they do define non-transient and then transient. So all of a sudden, we have a whole ordinance that never once mentions non-transient land development, although it does mention non-transient recreational dwellings, never once mentions non-transient recreational land developments, but here all of a sudden they bring it into play. And then it says street designs shall comply to the streets within non-transient RLDs, whatever that is. The transient, it has streets within transient LOD shall be not less than 50 foot in right-of-way width and shall be cleared, graded, and constructed as required by the Township Board of Supervisors, blah, 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 blah. These aren't public streets. Why is there a 50-foot right-of-way? There should be no right-of-way. It's just part of your property. And
Do you need a street requirement at all?
that's a good question, because it's really, what does the township care? It's
a driveway coming in, however you want to use it.
Now, the question would be stormwater. If they want to go and pave these streets coming in, what's the stormwater plan? Because now you've made impervious surface.
Same with it with gravel.
Yeah, true. And what's the stormwater plan for the whole thing? And the stormwater is not mentioned, I don't think.
Yeah, it would be covered under stormwater ordinance, so.
Okay.
I would reference it in there somewhere.
That it needs to comply with stormwater such and such. I would think that is a smart move. But I look at the street requirements and say, what difference does it make? It's really none of anyone's business. And it even goes to the effect here of,
Would those be considered lanes? The interior streets of would they be considered lanes? Because we get into a whole other thing about how many structures can be on the lane.
but these aren't structures. These are just non-permanent trailers on the site. So I don't think it meets the lane definition or anything. I think this is just totally different.
I would prefer to take it out.
Take out the street.
Take it out, because it doesn't, what are you trying to control? I mean, if they're gonna have let's just say a community center / pool, you know, you need fire protection, you need accessible, but I don't know that is something that we wanna dictate that you have to have an asphalt driveway or whatever that requirement is and what the width of that is, because it's all one piece of property. I don't know.
It's no different than if the township decided they were gonna require people's driveways to be a certain minimum width, and a certain turnaround at the garage and all kinds of stuff. Township doesn't dictate any of that. If someone wants to have an 8-foot driveway going in, they can have an 8-foot. If they want an 18-foot driveway, they can have an 18-foot driveway. It's up to them. This is really no different. It's whatever they wanna do.
You brought up a good point there, access for emergency equipment. With sort of width so that fire trucks can get in there.
What's the one with the bear, is that Bear Run up there, Moraine, where they've had the fires, they've had a couple fires there?
I mean, you want the drives to be a certain width. I don't know that, and that to me would be the only requirement, that it's
Turning radius is
14 foot or whatever if they do one way, and maybe it's 16 foot if they do two way, you know, to me, that's your standard. I don't know that you need to go into more detail than that with right of ways, because it's it's not gonna be a right of way because it's all on property.
I'd be fine with just that requirement, that they have to meet a certain width requirement for the access roads, or whatever we wanna call them.
Then if you wanna do that, I would probably put in it that they also need to have, a plan page on the, turning radiuses. Emergency vehicle accessibility.
I think you have to do that.
You do. I've actually, I got in a jam at a state campground because we have a motorhome and they tow a car. And I got into this cul-de-sac. It wasn't a cul-de-sac, it was an eyebrow, but way, way, way smaller eyebrow than what I built in plantations. And I couldn't turn. My motorhome could not make the turn in it, and I've got a tow behind me that is very difficult to disconnect once you're jammed into a non-turn position. So, emergency vehicle, accessibility plan or whatever you wanna call it.
And are we gonna call it a street? Cause I don't know if that necessarily meets the definition of street, it's how that.
I don't think it should be called a street. Yeah, I don't think it should be called a
Cause
street.
it's not,
They may wanna name those just for direction purposes.
Oh, they
when
will
people
name.
show up.
yeah,
But it shouldn't, I wouldn't put it, I don't know, we put it in township books or anything, you don't do that, right?
Well, we name streets, we name lanes, we name alleys. We define those in the ordinance. There should be another word that we can use,
this is
I was
called a
thinking of
driveway.
drive,
Yeah,
okay?
because it's not, one of your definitions, it's not streets, it's just a drive. It's not a private drive, it's just a drive.
Would you consider trail? It implies, gravel, it implies rough, it implies unkept or, unmaintained, so to speak, and then they could name everything, whatever trail they wanted. And that would indicate to everybody, emergency, police, everything else, that where it's at. There's nothing else. Do we have anything else in the township
Well,
named trail?
road naming conventions in the county. You do have drives, you've got circles, you've got roads, so DR, RD, a bunch of things. I don't think there is a trail, is there?
I think there is a trail.
Is there a trail naming convention?
I can think where they would call something, the Conestoga Trail Drive or something like that, where it's the name of the street, but it's not that surname, if you will.
Well, I'm saying I like the word trail, because what I'm questioning on drive is most, or half the roads around here are named something drive.
Yeah.
And if we could use a different word, it might make more sense. Because I don't know of any roads around here that name something trail. Like a trail is the
Surname
type
of
of
the
road.
type of road, right.
I don't mind the name trail.
yeah, it gets close to driveway, but it's, the definition's different for that too, so it almost, yeah, it does need its own term.
And I have
Or
one
an
sense.
expanded definition of something else that would also include it if it was a word like drive or driveway.
I think trail makes a lot of sense, and then we'll add it to the definitions.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're blowing away number 5, that's what we're saying. Or actually, no, we're gonna change number 5 to have in it,
Turning radius,
turning radius,
plan, and minimum trail width of 14 feet.
so what width do you want?
I'm throwing out 14 feet.
14 for a single, and will be for a double.
Lots of these roads in these places, trails in these places are one way in
Yeah.
a single lane.
It makes sense
But there are some that are 2, and
for the main entrance coming in.
the last thing you want is to make a 2-way road too narrow with 2, 8.5-foot RVs trying to pass each other.
So I think you'll see doubles coming in and out from the highway or whatever, but then once you get in, then you'll branch out into singles maybe, so.
I would probably go with, say, 18-foot on 2-way traffic trails, and you like 14 on
I think 14 works.
18 and 14, leave it at that. Okay, number 6, no individual on-site sewage or water supply shall be permitted, and all community systems for common use of campsites shall fully comply as evidenced by approved plans, blah, 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 DEP in the township. That's generic enough, I don't have a problem with that. Number 7 gets into some interesting things. 7I, no permanent external stuff like carports, patios, things like that, permanently attached to the unit. I tend to agree. I don't think we want to make these things permanent living spaces. And you see many of these campgrounds turn into that.
Absolutely, this one's all farther north.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like the no permanent kind of structure, so I'm good with that.
I'm fine with that too, for here.
Okay, location. An RV shall be so located that no entrance or exit from a park shall discharge traffic into a densely populated residential area exceeding 1 dwelling unit per acre, nor require movement of traffic from the park through such an area to obtain access to a public highway. A minimum of 150 feet of frontage on a state or township road shall be required. So what does that mean?
So to me, what that means is, you're in Arden Drive and the gas well is, you see it as useful life, you have a driveway entrance there, let's put an RV park right there and go down and you have the property, you can sort of fit it in, it's gonna come out into that area, into a residential plan.
That's what I interpret also. It's like at the back of Arden or
Yes.
Southview, where they
I mean,
go
you
in
don't have-
to the plan and then they sneak out the back into another road and
Right.
takes them.
Yeah.
So instead of pushing the development further back, they turn that piece of land into an RV park.
But something like Timber Ridge, I could take my property and turn it into an RV
You could,
park.
because you're more than.
1 unit.
Correct.
And is this really? What do we want to do is the better question. I don't know.
Well, your
the
HOA
answer.
wouldn't allow that, would,
What's that?
your HOA wouldn't allow that.
Actually, I'm not sure. My lot's exempt from most requirements by design. But even that's irrelevant. The point is, if you had something like mine, do you want them driving through Timber Ridge to go into that? And then what's highly dense versus not dense really depends on your zoning and all the other stuff around it. So I don't know how to regulate or not define, not regulate.
Yeah, I like the spirit of it.
Yeah, I like the spirit of it, but
Because I picture like the cul-de-sac with like a weird driveway down the back, that, like expands into the RV park.
You could state it that they can't access it from within a development.
Or subdivision or something like that. Yeah, that's what I was
So
just
that
thinking.
way you have, you've got whatever it might be, scenic ridge, whatever the development is, you can't put one in that accesses that roadway. Northview Drive, Southview Drive, Arden's.
we have arterial, collector, and local, right?
Right.
Would it be fair to say you can't access it from a local? No. Which streets are local in the township? Is it just streets in developments
Pretty much.
that are local?
Correct. And then your middle lane, your other streets like that would be less populated, less traffic. And again, you're gonna have a sheet of what streets are which in your ordinance.
So could we restrict this simply by saying it must have frontage on a arterial or collector street in the township?
Yeah.
Or direct access to those without going through without utilizing a local street.
Correct.
Yeah.
Something to that effect. I think that would make more sense.
Yeah, it'd be
Leave it at that. Common
you want
use.
the rest, you want the rest of that scrubbed off? And just say you're only allowing them to collector streets and arterial streets?
Yeah, I think 7II turns into what we just said.
Alright.
Now, do we want a minimum frontage? This has minimum frontage of 150 feet, but I don't know that that's necessarily required. If you
No,
have
I think-
50 foot that you're coming through to get to there, is that an issue?
I don't think it is.
I don't think it is either.
Like Nussbaumer's property's got a 50-foot strip to Route 19, and then it's all woods, everything in the back. So to me,
Correct.
it wouldn't be an issue. You have access to swing in and swing out, so.
Then I don't think the 150 foot's necessary. So do we want to at least mention 50 foot though? I think it makes sense for 50 foot, because if anyone ever wanted to do something else with it, 50 foot's gonna be your minimum right away if you turn that campground into a development later. Might as well make it 50 foot. Okay. Number 7.3 here. Minimum of 10% of the gross area shall be set aside and developed as common use areas for open or enclosed recreational facilities. No recreational vehicle site, required buffer strip, street right of way, cartway, storage area, utility site shall be counted as meeting this requirement. I don't have a problem with that. Now, number 4. All traffic into or out of the park shall be through such entrances and exits. Streets shall be laid out to intersect as nearly as possible with right angles. I'm not sure why that's the case either. In any event, no street shall intersect another at less than 60. The radius of curbs and pavements intersections shall be such to facilitate easy turning movement for vehicles with trailers attached. Again, why are we regulating any of what they do inside? Oh, is this just entrances and exits?
It's just entrances and exits.
That's right. Then I really don't have a problem with it. Entrance and exit should meet decent criteria. You have any issue with that then?
No.
Okay. Parking areas, number 5 here. In connection with the use of any RLD, no parking, loading, or maneuvering incidental to parking or loading shall be permitted on any public street, sidewalk, required buffer, right of way, public ground, or any private ground is not part of the RLD, unless the owner is given written. What is this talking about? Why would there be any parking discussion on an adjoining piece of property? I don't understand. Each RLD shall include off-street parking, load, and maneuvering spaces located and sealed. I don't even know what sealed means. So that the prohibitions above may be observed, and the property owner shall be responsible for violations of these requirements. What's located and sealed mean?
I mean, to me, that refers to an asphalt type roadway. It's sealed. It's not gravel, it's. I don't know that you want to allow anything on, even if they have an agreement, you don't want to allow it on somebody else's property.
I
Like
agree.
parking outside the campground, like overflow, I guess, on the public street or sidewalk, I guess.
Do we really need to say that?
I think it's overkill. I think it just gets you into trouble because there's something in there.
I mean, you already have an ordinance that you can't park in a township. So it doesn't matter what it is. So you could probably strike that.
I wouldn't mind striking the whole paragraph. I don't really see what value it's bringing.
And the second part mentions the parking, each RLD shall include off-street parking. I mean, we already said that in the parking
Yeah.
section.
Okay, so we're gonna strike 5. Okay, occupancy, campsites will only be used or shall be used only for camping purposes. No improvement nor any mobile home designed for permanent occupancy shall be erected or placed on any campsite or RLD lot by any renter, boarder, leasee. All recreational vehicles shall be maintained in transportable condition at all times. Don't remove the wheels of the vehicles, things like that. You can't, and then on the next page, moreover, no campsite shall be occupied for more than 12 consecutive months, and no campsite shall be the primary and principal residence of the owner or other occupant.
Is this saldo though?
What's that?
Is this saldo though?
I don't know where that technically belongs.
I believe that's a zoning thing. Occupancy?
Is that appropriate to leave in here
I
or
would
somewhere
think
else?
because you don't wanna, I think it still applies to the RLD because you don't want somebody moving in that's being there for 2 years at a time. So I think it's okay, but we'll have legal review that just to verify. Agree with that, Jeff?
Now, the
Yeah, I
question,
think that's a good example. The, now occupancy and appurtenances overlap a little bit, just wanna make sure those are consistent or take out any duplicate pieces to that.
the one question I did have on this paragraph was the very last piece of it. Each campsite to be used and occupied, except occasional guests for camping and recreational purposes only by a single household. That's sort of strange in the camping world, because oftentimes 3 or 4 people will get together and go camping. Multiple families will go and get a couple sites, and they'll throw up 4 tents on 2 sites for 4 families.
Right.
So when this says single household, it's sort of counter the way camping actually works in practice. Any comments?
Can we put a separate clause in there for primitive or / tent camping to address that? Or do we let it go?
I would prefer to just strike that. I know.
Yeah, I don't think it's really enforceable either. Who's gonna go knock on
Yeah,
doors and
who's
make
gonna
sure
know?
everybody's related?
I know
Problematic.
If there's a
we would-
problem and the cops show up, they have, it's in there though to,
Years ago, we would go up to Kinsu, and there would be 4 boats, few motorhomes, dozens of tents, and typically about 30 to 40 of us would go up, 10 families. And we'd split up among a half dozen campsites, and we'd go boating for the weekend. And that's what you do when you camp.
Mhm.
You don't, every family has their own site, it's just the whole group gets together and goes. So I would just throw away that portion of the sentence.
I'm good with that.
Now, the next piece of that, the township may require any owner to remove a recreational vehicle from the campground for a period of 7 days unless such owner can establish a prior removal within the immediate preceding 12 months. I actually like a requirement like that because you do want to make these non-permanent. And if you at least make them move out, you have some ability to go and make this non-permanent residence.
It's clear about off-site, they just don't move it to another,
Yeah, move from site A to site B.
it's gotta be off the property. Is it on there, like, does it read like that?
From the campground for a period of 7 days.
I guess that's where they park it out on the road. That's why they had to put the other. That's why they had to put.
Or on the
So-
neighbor's property, they have an agreement with. Okay, 7, non-transient recreational developments. They are, include all structures in the RLD that are permanently affixed to the land and intended to remain so affixed on a permanent or semi-permanent basis, available for rent or lease on a short-term basis.
Camping lodges.
Yeah, but why do they call that non-transient?
It doesn't move. Permanent.
Okay, I can believe that.
It's like,
Well,
everybody's in RVs, we're gonna rent the cabin they have there.
Well, I guess my question is this a definition?
It's the same as the beginning of the article.
Yeah.
It's not defined, but it probably should be.
Yeah, I think we need some legal definitions, but I think it's identical.
Yeah, I think it's identical.
It
I
is.
think it's word to word identical. So this actually just, we blow it away because we're gonna put a definition somewhere. Okay, then they have a whole discussion in 8 on records. Management shall maintain records on the place, basically. And then the more interesting part is that the township may refuse to issue or renew a permit for the operation of the RV or campground upon refusal to furnish the referenced records. This looks like we need to have a permit process for campgrounds. And if we have a permit process, doesn't that need to be spelled out somewhere?
It should.
What are the permits for?
I guess, in their mind, the right to operate a campground. Right? Is that what you're saying?
Similar to what, like, for a junkyard, you have a permit to operate a junkyard. Every year you gotta renew that permit.
I don't think it's a bad idea.
No, I don't either.
But I don't know that it's defined. That we need a whole permit process and everything else to go along with it. Application, everything. Fee structure, the whole bit. Okay, no owner or occupant of any campsite or recreational land development shall permit or allow the dumping or placement of any sanitary or other waste anywhere upon any campsite or elsewhere within the development, except in the places designated therefor. Fine. Then there's in 10X, common sanitary facilities. This is talking about public restrooms and things like that. No outside toilet shall be erected or maintained in any campsite. So I guess the question here is, this says there shall be common sanitary facilities located within 500 feet of each lot or campsite, and a minimum of 1 toilet per sex per 25 lots or campsites shall be provided. I don't know where to go with some of this stuff, because what do you do with the primitive sites? It's not likely you're going to have facilities within these distances of primitive sites. And
I guess the question is, do you need to define it at all? So if you're in an RV facility, you're most likely gonna have your own restroom, because you're gonna have a tank underneath the facility. Do you need to spell out where they need to have restrooms or not need to have restrooms?
it's a good question, because it really depends on kind of camping. In an RV or a motorhome or a trailer, they're going to have their own facilities. In a tent, they're not. In a tent,
So it only applies to primitive then?
but you can have tents on regular sites too.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be at a primitive site to be tenting. You're just not going to have an RV on a primitive site. But you could have a tent on a normal site. So I don't know what should or shouldn't be required. I don't know how we want to define it.
Are these porta johns or these physically built-in structures?
Yeah, these are like some nice bathhouses, toilets, showers.
But I'm thinking for the, for the primitive areas, maybe they require porta john.
I just keep picturing in my mind Cooper Lake when these crazies come in.
Oh, yeah.
I shouldn't call them crazies. The medieval
The
days.
Penzance Force, yeah.
Yeah.
Penzance.
That is just toilet heaven up there. It's just, they just line these things up with these porta johns. Hundreds of them.
I've been there a couple of years, and they have a guy, the companies come through every night, and we'll clean them.
Now, is that the kind of campground we want to allow?
No, you don't want to.
I personally don't want to, but that's where you get into porta-john kind of stuff. If you're gonna have a normal campground, it's gonna have some kind of a bathhouse.
They have one huge bathhouse there in the center of the area, but everything around all those access roads are all porta johns.
So I don't know what we want to require. Maybe we want more thought. I have to leave here in 5 minutes too. Absolutely have to.
Yeah, that's fine. We can wrap it up now. We're a good place to break.
Let me take a look here.
Toilets, it's a great place to end.
Lack of bathroom facilities.
Yeah, we might as well, because this is, because, when I get down into further stuff, I get to the next page, I got a number of good questions there too. So, okay, we'll stop here right before finish number 7, start at number 8 next time.
Okay, Bob, you can leave as you need to. We'll finish up the meeting. Connie, do you have any questions or comments based on the meeting tonight and what we've covered?
No, not really.
Okay, you in agreement with most of what we talked about and decided?
I'm sorry?
Are you in agreement with most of the things we talked about and decided? Distance.
It's kind of hard to follow along without seeing this stuff, so.
Okay.
I mean, there's questions, but I couldn't hear everything because I didn't see exactly what you're reading off of. And so it's kind of hard to tell based on that, especially with the buffer stuff. The campground, but to me, it sounds like it's more campground stuff that you're going over. The one thing I would say, I don't know the proper terminology for it, but I know you can only do so much with your campers, with your restrooms and stuff there, because of different types of water.
Yeah, we're gonna actually get into that. That's in the next page. I've got a number of comments with water and sanitary in the next page that we'll get to next time.
That'll be next meeting.
Yeah, and I know some friends at their campgrounds that they had places where they could just hook up to water and sewage.
See you guys later.
Okay, Bob, thanks.
Goodbye.
All right.
Oh, I need no quorum.
There's no quorum tonight, no voting.
Okay.
Mr. Star Scout over there, you got any questions for us? Okay, so you know what we're doing tonight? You can write that up. We're talking about ordinances for the township on developing new housing plans and things like that. And then we were talking about ordinances for recreational vehicle parks. Apparently you and your family have one of those, right? You go to different RV parks. So if anybody wanted to build one in our township, we're trying to determine what rules and regulations and things like that would require so that it was a good park and it made sense and was safe for everybody, rather than kind of be unregulated and who knows what you'd have there. So if you're going to summarize that for your Boy Scout badge, I think if you can remember that, I think you'll be set, okay? Thank you for coming. You're welcome anytime, okay? So with that, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone.